Today we're going to talk about Frontline General Spearpoint 1943. It is a tactical card game published by Collins Epic War Games. It is about World War II for two players, one the American player, one the German player, and both players will use waves and waves of units to send against each other and to try to create as much carnage as possible. There's going to be intense action, fast fighting, but well, don't take my word for it. Let's take a look instead. During the game, the players will use a hand of cards, which will include some command cards, which will give you some special actions, extra fire, extra defenses, different things that you can do, and you can play these cards to your advantage in different moments of the game. So there are just adds more options, more actions that you can do. Also later you will have to choose whether you want to get some extra command cards or extra units, so you can create different types of balance there. Then of course, in your hand you will have several units. At the beginning of the game, each player will form a deck that will have no more than 100 points using these numbers here. And you have, of course, different types of units you can have. You can have artillery crew, tank crew, infantry, different types of infantry, airplanes, pilots. So each time you can just create a different deck. You want more infantry, you want more aviation. Is completely up to you. There's a lot of variety there. However, and this is the interesting thing, if you choose some of these special units like artillery, they're powerful, but they need their own crew to operate. Same thing with the tank, you need the tank crew, and as you will shuffle your deck that you create and then draw cards later, then it might be that you get a lot of artillery but you don't have the crews to man them, or it may be you had the crews and not the vehicles, whereas infantry is less powerful but is much more flexible because you can just play them directly, you don't need to associate them with anyone. Each player will then commit his cards, his units, to the table, to the battlefield. And some units will form the front line, usually infantry and armor. Some of the units will form the rear line, and usually this is artillery. And then you will have airplanes which do not belong in any particular line. And usually the units in the front line can fire against the enemy's front line, and airplane if they have weapons able to do so. And the artillery can fire against the front line, against the airplanes, or even against the red line. In this case, the Germans don't have any. Then, after the units have been deployed, the players will declare the target. So you will just move your cards around to point towards the enemies that you want to attack. Suppose, for example, this tank wants to attack this other tank, the terrifying Tiger Panzer, and then also we want to have this guy attacking this guy, so they just stay where they are, but this guy wants to attack the American tank, and so does this guy want. Then suppose we want to have the artillery attacking that guy there, and we want to have the pilot also concentrating against the tank, so you might have to move things around a little bit. And you just keep doing this until all targets are declared and everybody has a clear target. Then the players will roll for initiative, and the winner of the initiative will fire with a unit first, and then the players will alternate firing with one unit at a time. So suppose, to give an example of how it works, that this unit is firing at this other one. Remember, usually the firing unit would be facing the target, but this is just to show you how it works. Also, you can ignore the crews here, it's just to show you that the units can function and can work. Units have, as you can see, different weapons, and weapons have different values. Units with more than one weapon can use two weapons. So in this case, for example, the Panzer would be able to use both. The artillery here, of course, only has one, but some units even have more than two. So in that case, you have to choose the two ones that you want to use. Then the firing unit will cross-reference the values of the weapon with the type of target the unit is firing at. Infantry, armor, or airplanes. In this case, it just shows that it cannot fire at airplanes. So suppose he's firing against the German Tiger 1, so he will roll 2 dice and needs to roll the number for that target or more. In that case, to hit, the Panzer needs a 13 or more. Suppose rolled a 15, then that's a hit. To calculate the damage, you first take into account the base damage of that weapon, which is a 10. Then you roll another die. Suppose the unit rolls a 7. Then you have a raw damage of 17 that you apply to this target after you have subtracted the defense. In this case, it's a 7 that tells you that really this unit is tough, it's hard to take down. So 17 minus 7, you have 10 points of damage that you will subtract from the endurance. In this case, the tiger goes down to 14 in endurance. There are a couple of other interesting things to be said about the damage. When you're attacking, if you roll a total of 2 or 3, then actually your unit is going to deal friendly fire. So you're gonna do damage to one of your own units, not to the enemy. If you roll an 18, actually it means that you're placing a very good hit and you double the damage, the one that you roll. You still apply the base damage here according to the weapon, but then you double this number, so that's pretty good. If you're very lucky and you roll during your attack a 19 or a 20, then you just destroy the enemy you're attacking, doesn't matter how big and tough it is. So that's pretty good. Another important thing is that if you're dealing a damage like 7 or 8 points, you will subtract it from here, as I said before, but you can accumulate damage only during the same turn. So for example, this unit takes 4 damages from one of your units, goes down to 20, then somebody else in your army deals either 5 points, goes down to 15, then if it's not destroyed or if it doesn't reach at least half of the value of endurance and the turn is over, next turn this unit is just as good and as fresh as new. So that's gonna be pretty irritating if you concentrate a lot of effort to try to destroy. If you reach 0, of course, you bring it down to 0 in 1 turn, that's pretty good because the unit is destroyed. But if you bring it down to at least half, then something pretty interesting happens, because then you apply a special damage by using a card that you will draw from this damage deck. Each damage card has 4 types of damage on it. Damage that can be specific to airplanes, artillery, armor, or infantry. So in this case, you will just place the damage card under the damage unit, keep leaving out the damage that applies according to the type of unit. If this was infantry, for example, then you would do like this. If this was an airplane, then you would do like this, but it's armor. So we do like this, and then you read the text, and there are just different types of bad things that might happen from your power of attack is reduced, or you have less defense, just all sort of things. And that's very interesting because, as you can see, there are a lot of different damages that can happen, and it just adds more unpredictability, more situations to the game, and also it helps fleshing out the theme quite a bit. After all of the attacks and the damage resolution, then the players will draw cards for the next turn, and they will check the victory conditions. If neither player has won this turn, then they will just repeat the procedure: commit, fight, draw cards. The way you win the basic game, well, you have 2 ways actually. One is by scoring 51 victory points, and you score victory points by destroying enemy units, and then you score as many victory points as the number indicated here. So you just add up the number of all the units that you destroyed, and when you reach 51, you win the game. The other way is by overrunning your opponent, which is if you maintain at least 1 unopposed land unit on the table for 3 turns. In that case, you also win the game. Also, you can go online on the website of the publisher, and you will find 8 scenarios that you can play using the cards of the basic game, and the scenarios will have different restrictions, special rules, cards that you can use, and just different victory conditions. So it is just good to have the option of being able to play multiple types of game with these components. This is a low complexity game. It's an extremely linear game. It really is. Deploy your units, attack, play command cards, get new cards, repeat. And yet it can create a surprising number of different situations just because of different decks that you can build, different units, damages, weapons, command cards. It's just many different things happen, and even during the same game you do have the sense that there are different phases in the battle, from when you launch an attack with a wave of infantry and maybe you manage to break through the enemy lines, and then there is a wave of tanks that come out when you did not expect them, then airplanes start, filling the sky. It's just very interesting. The game moves very well. It reminds me in a way of Panzer General. Of course, it's much more abstract because you don't have exactly maneuvering and positioning in the way you have there. But I like the combat system here better because sometimes there it can get a little laborious, whereas here it's just immediate resolution, and yet it is still detailed enough that you really have the sense that you are firing those weapons, and there's a different approach that you can have when you're using your weapons. So I really like it. It is very fast. Once you get to learn how to build your deck, that part of the setup doesn't take too long. That's probably the only thing at the beginning will be a little slow, but then again, you get to know the cards and you have a general idea of what you're trying to achieve with your deck. So once you get to the point, it's also very fast to set up. It is always fast to play. It is a lot of fun, and I really recommend it.